Hi, and thank you so much for joining me today for day 15 of 30 Days of Sketches Round 10 with Christie's Beautiful Life. And today's sketch that you see there at the top of the page is by Michele Buchina. I decided that I wanted to try out a brayer to add acrylic paint to my background. So that's what you're seeing here. Now the blue that I had was a bit too pale because I'm using the new Pinkfresh Studio Simply the Best, and I probably should have mixed this in with some black paint, but instead initially what I'm going to do is add some grey over the top by mixing white with a dot of black. So I'm just doing that on a spare piece of packaging, not mixing it too much because I want the different colours to show through. So just going over that blue with the white and black, but it still doesn't dull it down quite enough for me. So once I've done that, I'm going to find my white gesso and go over this with white gesso. And I'm much happier with the results there. A lot of this will be covered anyway by the paper and the pictures, but I just wanted to give it an idea. So you can see at the top there I've actually rotated the sketch by 90 degrees. Because I'm using square photos of my children, I'm struggling to fit them on in the manner that the sketch shows by Michele. So I've decided to turn it through 90 degrees and then I can just layer them ever so slightly over one another like that. So just trimming down my mat, and then I shall go around the edge with my edge distresser tool from Tim Holtz that you can see just there. So now that's done, I can start building up how I want this to go. And I do try laying it down as per the original sketch, but I'm just not happy with the way it's going to look doing that. So I go back to my original thought of rotating the sketch through 90 degrees, just like it shows there, and then having the fishtail coming off left to right horizontally across the page. So I'm using this lovely navy blue gradient paper, and this will be my fishtail. So I've distressed the edges of that and just checking that I'm happy with the size and placement before cutting the second piece, which will have a torn edge just like the sketch. So just cutting that off and then tearing where I want it to go. Again, distressing all the edges and popping that underneath. And as I mentioned, a lot of that mixed media is now covered up, but it still gives a good grungy feel underneath the photos, which is what I was going for. And these photos are of my father-in-law with the kids on a trip over here back in 2013. We were actually taking him back to the airport because he lives in Northern Ireland before driving to Disneyland Paris. So the kids were very excited. We were mid-extension, so the house was freezing and we were having to go out for meals because I had no kitchen, but it was still really lovely to see him and the start to a very exciting adventure. So this tag is off one of the 12 by 12 papers. And I think it's just perfect because it says happy memories right here. So I really want to make sure that I can fit this in somewhere, and it does nestle next to the photos nicely there. So just building up this photo mat and checking the positioning. I don't want too much of that blue showing, but I want enough of it there. So adding the hole to the top of the tag, and I will add some string there at the end. And distressing that just to match everything else. And do a lot of fiddling and faffing just to make sure that I'm happy with exactly how everything lays. And now going in and starting to stick it all down. So first of all, I'm mounting the photos onto these 25mm foam pads that I use. Try not to move anything too much, so just lifting up corners and edges to get these down. So I'll do both the photos first. And now the photos are down onto that mat, I shall stick the 2 strips of paper together before gluing everything together. So just checking again the positioning of the strips before I go ahead, lift off that top piece. Oh, I glue the tag down first, sorry. And then once that top piece is all together, I shall glue the bits underneath together. Just like that. And again, just lifting one side and then the other. Getting rid of the paper dust. Distressing, really does cause a lot of dust. Once again, just checking that I'm happy with the placement, and once I am, I shall glue those 2 bits together. Just lots of wet glue for this. And that's it, now it's nicely together. We can start with everything else. First of all, I want to finish off building up the colour behind the photo mat. I wanted to bring in a tiny bit of this mustard colour that you can see on the wall unit behind Grandad. So I'm just bringing in fossilised amber and this beautiful Tim Holtz stencil that we stock at A Little Magpie. And I just want a few dots to peep above. And I am going to use some water to water this down, so it will just be a hint of colour at the end of it, because that's really quite bright and it's not the look that I'm looking for. But you'll see how I deal with that after. And once the mustard yellow's down, I'm going to go into the bottom right hand corner to try and bring a bit of red in, because Amelia's got that lovely red dress, and at the moment everything's very dull on the layout, so I want to bring a bit of red in, and this range does have red in it, so that's really nice. So in with the candied apple, again the same stencil, and just adding a few of these polka dots at the bottom right hand corner, and then I shall check that there's enough, and I'm just happy with that tiny bit peeping through, and then I'm coming in with the chipped sapphire just to bring some of that navy in again. And that will just layer over that red. And it's at this point I realise that it really is quite stark against the rest of the grunginess on the paper, so the way to deal with that is to come in with my water and oxidise and blend everything together. And because we've got gesso under, the water sits nicely on top, and it means that I can manoeuvre the colour around a little bit and then just daub it up with some paper towel, just a kitchen towel, and it just leaves a hint of those marks behind, and that's just perfect. I just, like I say, I just wanted a hint of those colours added to the background. And then I want to come in with these black pluses from the Ellie Studio Thankful stamp. You'll have seen me using this a lot of times if you've watched me in the past. And it just brings a bit of structure to everything else that's very wishy-washy on here. And it's bringing that structure from the photos and the paper strips into the background, which I really enjoy. So just checking that I'm happy that I've got enough here. Don't want to go overboard, but I want it to peep through. Don't want to go to all this work and then have it hidden. So that was the Black Soot Distress Oxide. I'm just cleaning up my stamp. And then we can carry on. Just checking that everything's stuck down well, and then I can glue the actual entire piece to the background. Now that I'm happy with the layers and the stamping, it can all go down. So now this paper Roll With It from the Pinkfresh collection is full of different size tags, and I saw this tag in the red, which is what I wanted to bring in, and it says "This makes me smile." It was a bit of a struggle to find out where to put it because it's vertical rather than horizontal, but I like the positioning there. And then I'm going to go through all the other ephemera pieces to find out what else to put. So first of all, the 6x12 sticker sheet, and I find this ticket which works nicely, and I'm just trying to build a strip along the bottom. And some word strips now for the right hand photo. I do love these word strips. They really add something to the layout, especially if you don't want a title. Like this one isn't going to have a title, so it's just describing the mood really. So the blue one says "Moments Like This," and the yellow "Instant Mood Booster." Then on the puffy stickers I find this round captured piece, so that goes next to that This Makes Me Smile tag, which I'm just distressing so that it matches all the other pieces, and then that will get glued down. And I overlap the captured piece ever so slightly, just so that it's all joined together and feels like one cohesive piece. So sliding that into place before I carry on. Now onto the frames. I love these frames, all different sizes, and they don't have to be used as frames, use them as embellishments. You'll see that's what I'm doing here. I just take one of the small frames here and then the piece that's inside the middle that says cool, and that works as a perfect embellishment there. So just a small gap to fill at the bottom there, but I did notice this green flag, which I thought will bring your eye up to the top left of the layout, because we'll be putting a cluster bottom right per the sketch. So this is the ephemera pack, and when I looked on the back I saw a piece that said spending quality time together and family, and I thought that will be brilliant for on this layout. But in the meantime I'm just looking through to see if there's anything else that I can fill that gap in with. That's the family tag that I was looking for. It doesn't go underneath, but I do find a place for it. Not there though. And not there. And then that little star just fills in that gap nicely. Also find this little time well spent flag, which will go up to the top with the green one when I'm finished. And this is where I decide what to do. Underneath that family, you'll see it in a minute, there's a little splodge of blue that I wasn't happy with and wanted to cover. So I'm just going to create a little separate cluster down here with a couple of pieces of washi tape in grey and black to match the rest of the colours that I've used on the background. And then I'll stick that family on top of it, foam mounted so that it stands up a little bit. Washi tape is a great way of hiding things and creating little clusters. It gives a grounding to the cluster, and I quite like that. So as I say, just mounting this with foam pads, and then that will go down. Now moving on to this bottom right hand cluster, I find a puffy sticker saying loving this, which goes nicely with these photos. So I just add those and a couple of the little sprinkles around it. I start off with 2, but I do bring another one in at the end of the video. And finally just gluing the last bits down and adding the journaling and date. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. There are some close-ups and a still at the end if you want to see those. Please do check the description box down below for everybody else joining in on this fabulous hop. There's a playlist so you can just watch to your heart's content without having to click from one to the other. So my journaling on here just reads, last minute cuddles with Grandad before we drive him to Liverpool Airport and start the long drive to Disneyland Paris. So I just wanted to add some foam pads underneath that blue Moments Like This word strip, because I just felt like it was hanging there and needed something to ground it to the main layout. So just adding those, and then as I say, I'll come in with my roller date stamp to add the date, and I put that on that blue ticket that we put underneath the first photo. So thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it, something a bit different. I'm back on the acrylic paints again. I'm thoroughly enjoying my journey using some more mixed media and playing with acrylic paints. I hope you're getting some ideas too, and I shall see you tomorrow for the next video. Thank you so much. Bye for now.